All right, guys. So today I want to talk about this viral TikTok that's going around of a young 22-year-old who's a dance instructor, basically calling out parents for their bad parenting and that their 5-year-olds are acting out in ways that are quite abhorrent, but parents don't seem to care. Now I'm going to be playing a big chunk of her video before we get into it. But without further ado, here's that video.
I'm calling out all the parents. If you're a parent and your child is in pre-K to elementary school to high school, I'm calling you out. The children today, I have never experienced, and I'm 22. Having to teach and work with you guys as children has been the most traumatic experience of my life. I teach 5-year-olds ballet, 5-year-old girls ballet. I have a class of 10 students. They don't respect any authority. You ask them, can you stand in your designated spot? They're telling you no and shut up. They're throwing things at each other. They're throwing things at other people, other classmates. You say, can everybody sit in their spot? I don't want to. I'm not doing that. You don't get to tell me what to do. You're not my mom. You confront the parent. The parent tries to argue with you and fuss at you because you tried to reprimand and redirect their kid. I told a young little girl, please sit in your spot. You're not my mom. You don't tell me what to do. Okay. When her mom came to pick her up, I said, hey, your daughter's having a hard time following instructions. And 7 times today, I've had to redirect her to just sit in her spot. Well, clearly she didn't want to sit, and mind you, this is a mom. Clearly she didn't want to fucking sit right there. So, I mean, if she's telling you she don't want to do something, why keep asking her to do it? You know she's not going to do it. What world do we live in? Like, what in you guys' brain as a parent says, my kid not following any directions is a great thing. It's not that serious, and y'all don't have a right to tell her what to do. It's sad. It's sad. It's really, really sad. And another thing that's heart-wrenching is horrifying. It is horrifying. Your 5-year-old daughters are asking to listen to Pound Town and Ski Yee. Your daughters, your 5-year-old daughters are asking, can we hear Pound Town? I'm playing them Princess Tiana ballet music. And they are asking me, can we hear Pound? I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I'm so scared for these little girls today because this is the most insane agenda push I have ever seen in my life. We do freeze dance. You guys' daughters are twerking at 5. 5. Where's the parenting? Where's the boundaries? Where's the help? Y'all are not helping your kids. You're hurting them. You guys are hurting them.
So hearing all that, it's pretty wild, especially knowing that these girls in her class are 5 years old. Now, that doesn't obviously mean all 5-year-olds are like this and all people aren't, being good parents and taking care of their kids. But there is a huge uptick in what seems like lawlessness or no concerns for authorities or repercussions or consequences for one's actions. And we touched a little earlier on this topic with some stories coming out from DC of these young youths like 11, 12, even as high as 15, going around and performing carjackings, robberies, assaults, and some of them losing their life due to these actions. Now, after I covered that story, apparently 2 weeks later, this story came out of another young 12, 13-year-old who also had a long rap sheet.
We're getting a new look at the suspects in a series of armed robberies around the district. Take a look. This happened last week along 4th Street Southeast. The suspects threatening the victim with a knife and demanding their AirPod, their phone, their shoes, and school supplies. Look how young they are. The victim refused and began to yell. One suspect pulled out a gun. They made off with the items and ran away. That's just the latest in teen violence causing chaos across D.C., a city under siege tonight. Fox 5's Jacqueline Matter has more on the response from local leaders.
Jim, people are calling the crime out of control, and teens seem to be at the center of many of these incidents. Now, city leaders are asking some of the same questions we've been asking as well. What will it take to stop it, and who's responsible? 2 teens now in custody after 10 separate carjackings across the district, 7 of them at gunpoint. It's just the latest in a string of carjackings plaguing D.C.
As I mentioned in the previous video, I don't really know what's going on with the kids in DC, but it's not just them. You're seeing this all across the country, whether it's in the States or here in Canada, where these young teens to early adults are just committing these random acts of crime and violence. And again, there's no repercussions. They have no concern for authorities or consequences. And from having conversations with other people, a lot of them ask, well, what do you think is causing all this? What do you think is the reason? And I really think that fatherlessness is a big part of that. And I've, again, touched on this topic before, but I want to play a little bit of a clip here from a great video done by Richard Reeves about almost a year ago, I think. And it's talking about boys and men and how important it is for these young boys to have men present in their lives, regardless if it's a father, teacher, a big brother, an uncle, somebody that they can look up to, not only as a role model, but also an authority figure. And if they don't have them, what they're getting set up for in the future.
One of the real challenges here is that if there are men missing from certain crucial areas of our society and our economy, that makes it harder for other men and boys to flourish in those areas. We have an education system that has a dearth of male teachers. We have a labour market where the jobs that are growing fastest are ones where we have the fewest men. And in families, there's the growth in what you might call the dad deficit or fatherlessness. As men are struggling in each of those areas, what you'll see is it'll be harder for other men to follow in their footsteps. It's harder for boys to flourish if their fathers aren't engaged. It's harder for men to enter occupations where there aren't men. It's harder for boys to do well at school where there are no male teachers to be seen. And look at the heal sector, only 24% of the workers in those sectors are male. And that number is falling. And in particular sectors, we're seeing a really precipitous drop in the number of men. We have a drop in the number of male teachers. We have a very sharp drop in the number of male psychologists. That's dropped from 39% male to 29% male in the last decade alone. And among psychologists under the age of 30, only 5% are male. One of the problems that we face is what I call in the book a dad deficit. And that can be seen in various different ways. So 1 in 4 fathers don't live with their children. If parents split up, they're much more likely to lose contact with their fathers and with their mothers. And so 1 in 3 children, if their parents split up, don't see their father at all after a few years post the separation. So this fatherlessness is something that's very, very specific. And when 4 in 10 children are born outside marriage, and most children to less educated parents are born outside marriage, then we have to reinvent what it means to be a father. Because right now, men are still being held to an old standard of what it meant to be a successful father in a world where that is neither possible for many of them or even desirable. Because what we've seen is as women have grown in economic power and economic independence, then of course they're going to choose to be with a man rather than being forced to, as in the old days. This is probably the greatest liberation in human history, honestly, that women can now choose whether to be with a man or not. More than 2 out of 5 households in the US now, a woman is the main breadwinner. 40% of American women earn more than the average man. These are huge economic changes and all for the good, but it does pose some really sharp questions about what fathers are for. And until we escape the obsolete model of the breadwinner father, then we will continue to see more and more men being left out of family life. And the kicker is that boys in families that don't have a father presence suffer much more than girls. And so then what happens is that male disadvantage can become intergenerational, because if the fathers are struggling and therefore not really involved in their kids' lives, then the boys are the ones who suffer most, who will then go on to struggle themselves in education and the labor market.
Now, as Richard stated, boys and girls need men in their lives, but it's a lot more important when boys don't have a man in their life, which I think is very valid. But you are seeing these other videos of these girls who are very disrespectful to teachers, whether they're pepper spraying them or physically assaulting them or cussing at them. We had that video not too long ago of the young girl throwing a chair. She hit the teacher by accident, but not having the wherewithal to think and process, if I do this, the consequences are going to be such and such. And these kids today don't have a fear of what will be coming down the line. Not only with the cops, because we've seen how they treat cops, how they are against the police. They don't care about them. They'll cuss in their face. They'll yell at them. They'll talk back to them. But even what would happen when you got home. Me growing up, I knew that if I did something outside of the house and it got back to either my mom or my dad, I was getting in trouble. I didn't care about the police or, getting detention or whatever. I was concerned about what was going to happen at home. And these kids nowadays seem to have no respect for their parents or respect of how it would look like, or if you want to call it fear, because if I did something outside of the house and that got back to my parents, that was a poor reflection on them of how they were raising me. But not only that, it then reflects onto you, and then everybody has a certain view of how you are or who you are. And then you're put into that box of, well, that's a problem child or such and such. And this is not to say that all these kids that are acting out don't have fathers. But again, there's a lot less male presence, as Richard Reeves talked about, especially in schools. There's not enough male teachers there present to kind of be able to handle these children when they're acting up, when they're getting out of control. And it's not to say that these female teachers can't do it, but a lot of them either get disrespected, get challenged a lot more easier, and a lot more of them are getting hurt, like the woman with the chair. There was another one where a student basically tackled her and she was knocked out unconscious and he just kept beating her. But when you have a male presence there, I feel like that's less likely to happen. But hey, I'd love to get your guys' take on this. What do you think this is? What do you think could be causing all of this? Do you think it's something else other than fatherlessness? Do you think it's, just being raised poorly? I don't know. Love to hear from you guys. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.